Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to decode the story your heart is telling you. And it's a story that begins years, maybe even decades before you ever feel a single thing.
You know, a heart attack can feel like a complete bolt from the blue, right? A sudden, shocking event. But in reality, it's almost never a surprise. It's really the final, dramatic chapter of a long story. A story written day by day through all the small, repeated choices we make.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to map out that whole story. We'll start with how this stuff slowly and silently builds up. Then we'll learn how to listen for the earliest warning signs, decode the critical data from your checkups, and finally build a practical playbook for prevention. Because honestly, the small habits have the biggest impact.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on heart disease, we have to start at the beginning, how the problem starts, silently and invisibly, inside our own arteries.
So the fancy medical term for this process is atherosclerosis. But really, all it is a buildup of, well, gunk. We're talking fat, cholesterol, calcium, all sorts of stuff inside the arteries that are supposed to carry blood all over your body. And this is the #1 cause of coronary artery disease.
The absolute best way to picture this is to think about a slow-moving plumbing clog in your house. At first, you don't notice anything. The water flows just fine. But over years and years, deposits build up, and that pipe gets narrower and narrower. Well, it's the exact same thing in your body. That plaque narrows your arteries, and that restricts the flow of oxygen-rich blood to your heart and other really important organs.
And the scale of this problem is, well, it's massive. In a country like India, for example, this clogging process is a factor in cardiovascular diseases that now account for nearly 28% of all deaths. It's truly a silent epidemic.
Okay, so if you can't actually feel your arteries clogging up, how on earth does your body send out an SOS? What are the warning signs we really need to be listening for?
Now this is so important because it highlights a crucial distinction. Chest pain or angina is that classic warning. But here's the key difference, and you gotta remember this. If the pain starts when you're exerting yourself, like say you're walking up a flight of stairs, and then it stops when you rest, that's angina. That's a warning shot. But if that pain keeps going even when you're resting, that is a medical emergency.
But hey, it's not always about that classic chest pain, right? Your body has other ways of waving a red flag. Things like getting short of breath all of a sudden, feeling dizzy, or having that weird fluttering feeling in your chest. You know, palpitations? All of those can be signs that your heart just isn't getting the blood it needs.
All right, let's talk about a really surprising early warning sign. And I bet it's one that most people don't immediately connect with their heart health, but they absolutely should.
And this is just a brilliant illustration of how interconnected our bodies are. See, the arteries in the penis are much smaller than the ones around the heart. So they can show signs of that plaque buildup, that clogging, way earlier. What this means is that for some men, experiencing erectile dysfunction can be one of the very first signs of a deeper cardiovascular risk, sometimes showing up years before any chest pain ever would.
Okay, let's move on to the next part of this story, because some of the biggest risk factors are completely invisible. They have zero symptoms, which is exactly why understanding your body's data, your numbers, is so incredibly powerful.
These are what we call the silent risks. Things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, rising blood sugar, they often show no outward signs at all. You can feel perfectly fine on the outside, while on the inside, they're steadily damaging your blood vessels. This is why getting screened, especially after you hit 30, isn't just a suggestion. It's an absolutely critical part of prevention.
So when you get that blood test back, what are you even looking for? Let's break it down. Real simple. For your LDL, the bad cholesterol, you want that number under 100. For HDL, the good stuff, you actually want it higher. Over 40 for men, over 50 for women. And then there's triglycerides, another fat in your blood. You want to keep those under 150.
Here's the easiest way to remember this. Think of LDL as the lousy cholesterol. It's the stuff that deposits plaque in your arteries and causes the clog. HDL is the healthy cholesterol. It acts like a little cleanup crew, helping to carry that lousy cholesterol away. So bottom line, you want less of the bad stuff and more of the good stuff. Simple as that.
Let's make this real for a second. Let me tell you about a case, a 59-year-old guy who went to his doctor with some kind of vague chest pain. His standard tests, like an EKG, they all look normal. But his doctors, because of his risk factors, they decided to do this simple, non-invasive scan called a calcium score test, just to see if there was any of that silent plaque buildup.
And boom. This is the power of data. His score came back at 350, which is considered high risk.
That one number revealed a hidden story his body had been writing for years. And when they looked further, they found a staggering 90% blockage in a major artery. 90%. That test, that one piece of data, could have very well saved his life.
Now, I know hearing all this might sound a little bit alarming, but I promise you this next part is the most empowering part of the whole story. Because while you can't control your age or your genetics, you have an incredible amount of control over how the other chapters get written.
Get this, 80%. Experts agree that nearly 80% of premature heart disease and stroke is preventable. That is not a small number. That's a huge number. It means the majority of this story isn't set in stone. It's written by the habits we choose every day.
And your prevention playbook? It really starts right there on your plate. And listen, this is not about some crazy restrictive diet. It's about smart, sustainable choices. It's the fundamentals, right? Controlling your portion sizes, filling up on veggies and fruits. And then it's about making smart swabs, whole grains, lean proteins, and cutting back on unhealthy fats and salt. And hey, planning ahead and even allowing for the occasional treat, that's key too. This is about building a healthy, long-term relationship with food.
Part of your playbook should also be staying up to date, because science evolves. For decades, we all heard, take a baby aspirin every day. Well, that advice has changed. For what's called primary prevention, that means you have no known heart disease. It's actually not recommended anymore for most older adults because of bleeding risks. But, and this is a big but, for secondary prevention, if you do have a history of a heart attack, it is still really important. The takeaway? Always talk to your doctor.
And all of this leads to our final and maybe our most crucial point. Long-term health, it isn't built on some grand, sweeping gesture. It's forged in the small, consistent, and often pretty simple choices we make every single day.
I just love this quote from Dr. Varun Bansal because it reframes the whole thing. It's not a battle, it's a relationship. It's about checking in with your body every day. Did you move? Did you do something to manage your stress? Did you get those crucial 7 to 8 hours of sleep? These are the daily conversations that keep your heart healthy.
So we've seen that the story of our heart's health is written over decades, but it's edited every single day. Knowing that even the smallest steps, like taking a walk after dinner or choosing an apple over a cookie, can literally change the entire narrative, the only question left is, what's your first move going to be?